Hi, this is Nancy Mansell coming to you from CNM Behind the Glass. Now we're going to look at solving quadratic equations by a couple of different methods. The first one we're going to look at is the zero factor property and solving a quadratic by factoring. Okay, first we're going to factor this guy. Normally I would use my secret shortcut method, but because this is a prime number, it's going to be fairly easy to do without it. This tells me the signs are different. I got 1 plus 1 minus. 28, likely 7 times 4. Let me try this and see if this works. I have negative 12 plus negative 7 is positive 5. Looky there, got lucky with the first thing I tried. And let's move on. The zero factor property basically says that if a times b equals 0, then either a is 0, or b is 0, or both are 0. We're going to use that to solve this equation. Being a quadratic, it's going to have two answers. That's what we expect, right? We started off with an x squared, so we're going to have two answers. Okay, let's just finish this off. 3x plus 7 equals 0, and x minus 4 equals 0. Subtract a 7, and you have 3x equals negative 7. Divide both sides by 3, and you have x is negative 7/3. Over here, I'm going to add a 4 to both sides, and I simply have x equals 4. Quadratic equations generally have two solutions, two different solutions, and that's it. Very good. Now let's look at the square root property. The square root property is used when you have a b that is equal to 0. In other words, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. That's the general form of a quadratic equation. When the b is equal to 0, you can easily use the square root property. Another way of saying it is when there's no single x. Notice how I have an x squared and I have something without an x. There's no single x. In other words, b is 0. When that is the case, it's very easy to use the square root property. What you need to have is the x squared by itself on one side of the equal sign. And we have that, right? So let's just take the square root of both sides. X equals plus or minus the square root of 5. Now, why is it plus or minus? Because it's a quadratic equation. There's going to be two answers. Actually, what this means is the square root of 5 and negative the square root of 5. But I'm fine with you using this shortcut symbol. Most people say plus or minus. As long as you know in your own head it's not really plus or minus, it's plus and minus, I'll let you use that symbol. Okay, let's try another one. In order to use the square root property, you should probably have the x squared by itself. So let's move the 48 to the other side. 4x squared equals 48, and let's divide both sides by 4. Now I have x squared equals 12. We'll go ahead and take the square root of both sides, and now I have x equals plus or minus the square root of 12. So am I done, or is there something more I can do to this? Look at that square root of 12. Does it have a perfect square factor? It does have a perfect square factor. It's got a 4 in it, right? So let's say x equals plus or minus the square root of 4 times the square root of 3. And the square root of 4 is 2. So our final answer is x equals plus or minus 2 times the square root of 3. Excellent. One more, also using the square root property. Okay, if I multiplied this all out, it would have a single x. The b wouldn't be 0. But if I leave it in that form, watch how easy this is. We're just going to take the square root of both sides, and now I have x minus 5 equals 6, and I also have x minus 5 equals negative 6. Okay, Let's add a 5 to both sides. X equals 11, and we'll add a 5 to both sides here. X equals -1. And you're done. Good job.